Hey, my friends, this is Mitchell Chernock, author of Breathe For Me. I am on with Peter Turner on the Break It Down show. I'm excited to get started.
Man, I love it. One of the best things. So people often ask me about the show, like, "How do you do all these things, Pete?" And that kind of thing. And they'll say, "How do you get all these incredible guests?" And I'm like, I built the show to the point where a lot of it is just it's referrals, right? I got you because we have a common friend. We're from a common place in Benicia, and Eric Hoagland has been on the show before. Said, "Hey, you got to have Mitchell on the show." And so when you build a community on a podcast like we've done here, or you build a community in a community like people have done in Benicia or any other place, you get to meet the most amazing people that may live a mile from your house, but you've never had an occasion to interact. And so I love this part of my show in that we get to have these moments. We get to know each other and commune together. And so thank you for coming on the show, Mitchell. It's been a delight getting to know you, and I can't wait to share you with the audience.
Now, this is our conversation yesterday, getting ready for today and having an opportunity, especially for all the things that you've done. I've watched multiple podcasts by you. You're a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to an interview and a friendship.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. When you got introduced to me by Eric, how did he describe me? Did he spend much time talking about you to me about me?
Well, I had called him about doing a presentation for Rotary, which I did yesterday, and which was a lot of
Mhm.
fun. And he said, "Oh, you got to meet my friend Peter Turner." And I said, "What does he do?" He goes, "He's an Army spy." I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, what? That sounds great." He said, "Just email him and tell him that you know me and you want to be on and you want to talk about your book and all the things that go into this." And so I emailed you and you emailed me back and said, "Hey, a friend of Eric's is a friend of mine. Let's drop in on
Sure.
March 5th." And here we are.
And here we are. Yeah. And that's the magic of these networks. Are you a networker at heart? Is this something you deal with because of your business and your personal past? How would you characterize your networking personality?
Um, yeah, I'm everywhere. Uh,
Okay.
in the last 2 years, really working on the book, but I've been in the mortgage and lending industry. So I've been a big networker. I've done hundreds of radio shows and put on live webinars and seminars for people. But getting to this point, and in the last 2 years, really managing social media because I don't want my professional world, the real estate world or lending world, to define who I am. And this is a different part of my life. And writing this book has a lot of things in it that redefine who I am and show people just a completely different personality. And so you have to network. I'm on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram a lot. I put out short videos from podcasts and interviews I've done about the book. So yeah, I'm a major networker. It's a lot of fun. And when people engage with you is when you get all the energy.
When you meet people at a party, and you say what you do, what is it that you say that you do?
Well, this last few months, my people who run my company, I was a manager for over 30 years and 14 years at this country. It was just a blast. But I gave up my office about a year and a half ago so I could spend more time at home. And as I get more into my book and my business does thrive, not completely on its own. So lately, a lot of times I'll go to a party and people will ask what my professional life is. And I have a choice between saying I'm in real estate and lending and then hearing them talk about real estate and the market and making money and all the things that really don't present themselves, depending on the type of party or event you're at, as something I want to talk about.
Mm.
Over the last few months, I tell people I'm a professional writer, author with a published book, and I get to sit back and listen because everybody has a story. People are more enthralled with the fact that I'm an author and a writer than if I owned American Pacific.
Right. Yeah. 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 Exactly. It is not a common thing for, in this, I'm using this in a very specific sense, very legitimate authors who've published many books and make their living 100% of writing. It's common for those guys to say, I don't really like to say that I'm an author. Now, sometimes it's because they're so successful, they don't want to dominate the conversation because then a million questions come at them and then it becomes work and nobody else gets to talk at all. But other times they just sort of feel bad that they had made it. Like, I used to be a carpenter. So I say I fix up houses. And like, you've not done that in 15 years, but you're capable of saying, I'm an author. How did you get to that point? How did you free yourself up to state the obvious without the baggage that other folks bring to this. And again, everybody gets to the party however they want, right? So no judgment there. But that is interesting to me that you were able to say, I'm an author with a published book.
About a year and a half ago, a friend of mine here in town, Michael Mao, he's a realtor, but he's also a pastor, and I was really into the spiritual part of this book. And he said, "How you doing?" And I said, "I'm doing great. I've written a book, and I'm working on getting it out here in the next year." It was like I told him I listed 10 houses, and I realized when I told him that, and he said, "You wrote a book?" And I said, "Yes." He says, "I have to buy it." Didn't even ask me what it was, and I in those few minutes, he started telling me that he wanted to be a writer, that being a pastor in his extra life was something where he gets to deliver a message. If I don't tell people I'm a writer or an author, then I have put myself into the real estate world. The thing is, if I tell them I'm a husband and a father and a great grandfather, they ask me about that story, it's still going to lead back to the fact that I've journaled my entire life, my grandson's life. We are nowhere without words and without writing. And I share stories with people anecdotally. People will call me and they have financial issues and things, and I can relate to a lot of those. Or I just spoke with a woman the other day, and this also happened to a dear friend of mine just a couple of weeks ago. She just in the middle of a conversation about qualifying for a loan, she tells me that her sister-in-law, her husband passed away. And it turned out that her husband, her brother, this woman's brother-in-law, was basically her best friend. And they were trying to get through the idea of loss. And I gave her something that I attempted to do when I lost my father 26 years ago, was why would you try to get through it? Why don't you make it part of who you are? And it ultimately read to me, reading to her a piece called The Promise. And she was just blown away. She bought my book and she's giving it to her sister, even though just the promise itself, it's my commitment. Mark Twain wrote two very simple little books. There was just a few of them put out, like just a few hundred, called Eve's Diary and Adam's Diary. And this leads to a lot, because in my age group, I'm only 71, but people are passing away. Wives are losing husbands at a much higher rate than the other way. And I promised my wife I would do all that I could to survive her. In the back of Eve's diary, in the back of Adam's diary, she says, "Adam," it's Adam actually, "of the earth, I will not survive you. I can't. I cannot live without you. But I know that you are strong enough to live without me." And he makes a promise, tries to keep that promise, as I am doing right now. I'm, people who will read my book, you know already, I'm 17 years younger than my wife. And we have an amazingly romantic, beautiful relationship. But people, when they find that out, they want to know my story. And my story, a lot of it is in this book. Yeah. So it's different, just becoming this person is who I want to be.
Yeah. When will you become this person?
Well, that's a great statement. There's an old piece that I read the first time I ever did a public speaking event for a mortgage company over 35 years ago. And it's called The Train. The train never arrives. It's all about the journey. I would like to think that at every time, every moment that I think I've reached some sort of a spot, that there has to be not a higher peak to climb. I got in an argument with this woman the other day, and then she came back. She said, "I agree with you." She said, "You cannot change men. Help us to evolve. You were created to be by our side, not behind us, not in front of us. And as I evolve as a human being, I become, hopefully, a better version of myself." I don't see that ending.
All right. So you're always going to become a better version of yourself. Who holds you accountable to become that person? Who's the person in charge of where you're at and what you have to do?
morally and ethically, spiritually, myself.
Mhm. Okay.
But then in the spiritual world also is Darrell, my wife.
Mhm.
She has seen me through things that other people would not stand for. When she met me, I was 20. I carried with me something on December 29th, 1999. I asked God to take away from me, which is my father's anger. Um, Sometimes I had a girlfriend when I was in high school, and I realized I had gotten mad at her, and I yelled at her so loud that it hurt my ears.
Mhm.
And I thought, I can't be this person. And I have worked and evolved throughout my entire life. But I just have to say, younger men with a more sophisticated, older, mature woman, you're going to discover things about yourself that you can't with somebody who's a peer or a friend or a girlfriend. It's just different. I found that this is the person I have to become.
How do you hold on to who you are while you become somebody else?
Uh, in the last many years, and in terms of how I truly feel about the world right now, of course, I evolved tremendously on October 7th when Israel was attacked. Uh, I have a lot of Jewish friends. I have several rabbi friends, ultra conservative Hasidic Jews who seem to allow me to be myself. But in those conversations, they ask the same thing: who are you, and who are you becoming? And I used to tell people that, see, I had a company, Sky Valley. It was my company, and it defined me. And I realized that if you let that define you, then you're not discovering yourself.
Mhm.
And I would tell people, hey, here's what I believe. I'm a conservative and I'm Jewish. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm not Jewish. I'm a Jewish man.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
evolution is that I am who I am. Yesterday, when you and I talked, I mentioned that I went to go do what is called an aliyah, or a return, a beautiful prayer for my father a year after his passing. And the rabbi that was supposed to hold that service was gone. His daughter was injured in a terrorist attack in Israel.
Mhm.
And I ended up with Herman Wolk. And he defined that path for me, even though it's 26 years ago. I've been on it, but the last 2 years or more. And he simply said, you can be Jewish, you can be anything you want. What are you going to do with it, and who will you become? And that has been very profound for me. This writing this book proved to me many things, that I am perfectly imperfect, but I love my wife. I miss my family tremendously. I'm the only surviving person out of six, and this is the person I'm becoming. Right? Sometimes we're forced to become somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a great loss. I've had great losses, but I'm not different than anybody else. It's how I choose to deal with them. Although my wife said I was an effing liar in 2006 when I told her I thought I did pretty good with the loss of my father, and she just looked at me like I was insane. She says, "You haven't been the same person for 5 years," and I thought I was doing good. So, but with
Yeah.
her help, I've found myself a lot.
Yeah. Man, there's a lot of stuff in that development, and this goes ultimately to the poet that you've published a book of poetry. By the way, here's the book, everybody. Breathe for Me. And this is what we do around here. I'll put the link up here in a moment, but this is the book, and you guys get this thing in just a short little read. Poetry's great. John Adams once said something. I'm paraphrasing here. You'll never travel alone if you travel with a book of poetry. You'll always have a friend. And that's a true thing. And just I know this is not an actual poem, but one of my very favorite pages in your book is right here. You guys see that? You're not gonna be able to read it, but this little poem right here. This is actually the tail end of a poem. But just the line itself is poetic. God, comma, I promise I won't use again. I need your help. I am praying. That alone is a wonderful poem. And it's part of a longer poem, but and obviously the subject matter is about using, but just that little line there is a great reflection. It's a great it's a great thing to say and think about. Whatever, whether it's using or whatever it is. I'm not going to stuff my face full of donuts. Please help me, and then you pray for that strength, right? So I appreciate that. When you're becoming this poet, and your wife is like, hey, you've not been the same person for 5 years. That can be any adult who's gone through anything, a divorce, a loss of someone who was particularly close. And we will think that we are better off. But when you have the courage to ask around, like we've all had friends that have gone through a divorce, and 2 weeks later they're like, "I'm fine," and you're like, "Yeah, you're far from fine." In a couple of years, we'll get to know you again, but for right now, there's a lot of damage there. Whether they were the leaver or the leavee, it just takes time, and there's a maturity required to accept that, to know that like I think I'm fine, but I'm probably not. So, what lessons have you learned? Have you as you have encountered these types of situations where it's like, oh, this person's saying the thing, or I am now saying the thing that I always talk about? Because how many times have we heard ourselves say something? You're like, this is patently ridiculous. The things that are coming out of my mouth, and what do? I kind of clam up. I'm like, you should shut your big damn mouth, Pete. You know, and I don't know if that's the right answer, but I know that me blathering on about something that I know is against one of my own axioms, it's a lesson that I continue to learn to this day.
Uh, for me, and I haven't gone through a divorce. I'm my wife's third husband, but we made it for just about 50 years. So that just kind of says she found the right guy. My wife came after me.
Mhm.
It's a great love story. It's still a love story. Uh, but getting if you get over something, you get over the flu, right? You get over a cold.
Mm-hmm.
If you say, I got over the loss of my father or the loss of my wife, or I got over my divorce, it's almost like you found a way to compartmentalize it, which means
Okay.
you didn't learn from it. And I have a wife who's constantly making sure that I'm on a learning curve all the time, about things that we talked about. Uh, we we communicate differently. She knows when something affects me. When I am out, and the conversation in our age group ultimately leads to somebody who is lost, somebody who is left, maybe just a son or a daughter who no longer communicates. Uh, I'm in that position. I immediately go back to my own loss, but not in that depressing way, that way that pulled you under. It was like when I finally discovered, and I heard this story um, about how Jews deal with loss. Now, there's a lot of different stories about it, but this was a rabbi that said it to me. Is Michala, you keep them alive. Talk to them every day. Let them know that you're here and ask that they're watching over you. And you will come to a point where you believe that they are with you and you keep them alive. When we act as though they are just completely gone, we have an empty space. I don't want that empty space. I'd rather be filled with a tiny bit of sadness. Some of the, I tell about my father. My father was a very hard man, but he was an extremely loving father when he wasn't a hard man. Somebody, well, you rationalize that. I don't sit there and say that he didn't do these things. I'm just choosing to look at the stuff that he actually did that affected other people's lives. In that book, one of the ways I get through understanding about the loss of my father and how hard he was, I really was on an elevator with my father in the 1960s when he was a Shriner, and a disabled kid gets on the elevator, and he literally got these people off the elevator and made sure they got to the Shriners Hospital so that they could take care of him because they didn't know about it. And on the other side, he's out there talking about the Japs and the Japanese and all of these terrible things, like he's a racist. And then when I'm 16 years old in the World Jamboree for Boy Scouts, he brings 2 Japanese scouts to my house and treats them like if they're his only sons. I get through these things because I can look at those things and not, sure, right now, thing we didn't talk about yesterday, even when my wife runs up the stairs in my 2-story house, sometimes I'm taken back to that pounding, my father chasing my brother in my house.
Yeah.
It's just there, but it doesn't define me. It did, but it doesn't.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. There's the, I don't know, I guess our later generations, we've got a different relationship with love, loving our kids. We realize that our actions, and I guess all parents do, that your actions are impactful, you know? And if I chose to go down a list of all of the awful things my mom or dad said or did to me, yeah, the list would be pretty long. And they wouldn't want to hear either of those things brought up over and over again because all of us are at our worst, the worst person we've ever been, you know? And the lines that stick with the kid or the spanking or the terror, you know, that does it. It's indelible. It's a mark on you and you have to deal with it. I imagine that mechanically we need some of that, that we need some of that, you know, just the way we're wired so that we can learn to adapt and behave in the way that adults behave. But there is a difference today with our connection to expressing our feelings. Not all men do this, but we also the ones that are like, I think I'm having a heart attack. Let me get in the car and drive to the hospital. You know, like we're those guys. Or, that might have been a heart attack. Let me get back to work. You know, just ignore it altogether. We still have a lot of that in us, but there is something in the male nature that is hard to it's hard to sort out in a civilized society because men are designed to be brutes. And when there's less brutalism needed, we have to figure out how to still be us, but also be a better level of us. How am I doing? Is this making sense?
You know what? I'll just do a man thing. Okay.
Okay.
Hey, yeah, I've been peeing blood for a few months. It's like,
Yeah.
what? Not
Yeah.
not one day, a few months?
Right.
Are you out of your mind? Yes, I think I had a heart attack. I'll go to the hospital on Friday after my work week is over, and of course Thursday night
Right.
you take
Yes.
your last breath. Men are embarrassed when something terrible happens to them that is physiological. They believe
Yeah.
it's their own fault, and they don't want anybody to know about it, and so they die with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Why?
Yeah, I don't know. I will say that uh, 18 months ago, uh, a couple of days after July 4th, and you know that I'm a martial artist, and I really got back into training again in June of 1918, in June of 2018. And I lost about 20 pounds. I felt really great. I've been active. I train. I got involved in Filipino martial arts and sword fighting. The idea is, and this is this little baby right here. You don't want to get hit with one of these. But
Yeah.
3 or 4 days after July 4th of 2024, I I eat bee pollen every day. I take great care of myself. I've gone 6 years without being sick, and I got an intestinal infection, and I lost 11 pounds in 5 weeks,
Jeez.
and it scared the living daylights out of me. And I had every test under the sun, scared the hell out of my wife, um, and it was weird because this is a guy thing. The moment I was feeling okay within a few weeks, even though I felt sick every day, I was still working out. I felt like I had to keep moving, and I kept working. I did not let it stop me. I did all the medication. I did everything I was supposed to do, changed my diet. Basically, for about a year, almost became like a vegetarian so I could calm down my body. Uh, but it changed me. I mean, I'm talking to my wife, and I lost all this weight, and I finally gained back a little bit. And I don't know how we're swearing on this show. So my wife, one of her friends said, "So how's your husband doing?" She goes, "He looks fucking awesome." And it was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, she sees I lost all this weight, scared to death, and she thinks I look great. So different viewpoint.
Yeah. Different viewpoint. Yeah, I was going to ask. You mentioned the age gap, especially when you're 20. The maturity gap is just massive between a 20-year-old and a 35-year-old, especially if it's a woman and a dude. You know,
Right.
and so that's big. And you can't blame anybody for being like, "What are you idiots doing?" But when it works, it worked, right? And so this has worked. You guys are going to be together, and that's not changing. When when did you guys know? Not the love side, but as love matures and love becomes different things, and you explore all these different kinds of love. When did you guys know that, like, oh, this age gap really isn't ever going to be a thing? Because it's not given to you. You've got to go earn that.
I had this conversation with my wife yesterday. We sit out at night. Sometimes we'll have a glass of wine, and she was asking me what I was going to talk about today, and and how we got started. And I was under a spell, literally. I mean, it was the craziest thing in the world, because when Darrell decided that she wanted to be with me, she came after me. I was not really aware of what was going on. We didn't know each other's ages. We all look different. I don't know how you looked when you were 20 or 21. I had a huge beard. Yeah, I look good. I had a huge beard. I had a big, huge afro. I was in medicine. It was so different. And she saw this person, and when she realized how old I was, she never saw that person. She saw energy and romance, and I was willing to go do things she wanted to do, until she realized they were all the things I wanted to do. I mean, hey, you give me Roadhouse Blues from the 1950s, same with my wife. Rock and roll, Rolling Stones, you name it. We are so perfectly aligned musically, and people think that's fun. No, when I listen to my wedding song, I find my wife if we're in the same place. It pulls me to her. And I think that the big defining moment was that the year before we got married, her father passed away.
Okay.
And to be there for Darrell was the first time I really had to be there for her, because she was already seeing people in my family going through, my father creating mayhem. It's, you're going out with a Catholic woman, and she's got children, and you're not going to have children. And, how are you going to make this work? And you're younger than she is. And
yeah.
I was under a spell. None of it meant anything. I was going. I was on the journey. The
all
idea
fair questions, though, on your dad's part. He cared enough to care about that, and to point out the obvious things, right? But so when did you figure it out?
I told my wife when we got married that I wasn't. I loved her. I wasn't sure how much in love with her I was or am at that time. And she didn't flinch at that. She knew that her mission was to help me on my way to discover that. And in the back of the book, for certain people, I mean, I always write down in the back of the book, make out like teenagers. And that's because when I was a teenager, I wasn't the best looking guy. I was small. I ran track, so I didn't do things that attracted a lot of girls. And it was like, I literally had a friend of mine say, hey, I've got this friend. Her name is Rhonda, and you need to meet Rhonda. And I said, why? And I said, because she'll teach you how to kiss.
Hello, Rhonda.
But it was amazing. It was the most amazing feeling I could ever imagine. And at one point, to make out like that, in my biblical world, it's the portal to the soul. And it's this amazing, intense feeling when you're not doing it to have sex, when you're just in this incredible embrace, and you're thinking, oh my God, I don't want to let go of this. And that was when I realized that the spell was going to continue. And I've learned a lot since then. I wanted, actually, throughout our relationship, I wanted to make my point and win arguments, because that's what my father did. Man, that was a real losing situation.
Yeah.
You can't win an argument with your wife if you want to stay married, unless it involves health and safety.
Yeah. Or you could say that again, too.
Yeah.
Our loved ones will often look out for our health and safety more than we will for ourselves. We'll take on risks and everything else, especially dudes. But it's their job to make us realize that there's more than just us in this relationship. The other person doesn't want to see you suffer. I hate when my special someone doesn't feel well. I hate it, and so I want to take care of them, but I prefer that they just feel good, And so, yeah, it's some kind of wiring in how we are built is to look after the people that we love and make sure that they also take care of themselves in a way that is obvious how you would want somebody else to do if you love them. But we, for whatever reason, do take on more risk than we probably need to at times, and probably don't take as good a care of ourselves day to day, decision to decision, as we might, as we'd want somebody else to do. How about that?
No, that's great. For a long time, my wife got ill in 2011, and I got into this habit of asking her how she is to the point she said, just stop asking me, okay? Just come check on me, right? But when we got through that, which is the first piece in the book is called Rapha, God the Healer, and why I wrote that piece just a couple of years ago, because I was reflecting on that illness and what it actually did to me, and making me realize how sensitive things are. She got a virus when we were out of the country, and it affected her heart. Is that there are all these things in the world, whether they're human or viral or environmental or just the stairs in your house, there are things that come after us. And I tell my wife, and I know people think that they're the same thing. I'm her protector. She's my shield. But as the shield, it's shielding me from the stuff in the world that comes after me that affects how I think and see. I'm her protector because I want her to be safe. I don't ask her very much anymore how she is, because in the last many years, I get up in the morning and I bring her a cup of coffee 7 days a week. I go up and I touch her and I make sure she knows I'm there, and I ask if she needs anything. And then I let her do her stuff. Every woman on the planet who wants to look good spends an hour building a bridge in the morning or whatever it is that they're doing. I have to throw this in there. As people know, I take my great granddaughter to school every day, and in 7 years, she's never once been late. But lately I get in the car with her and it's so strange. She's 15. She's a wonderful girl, and she's doing makeup on the way to high school. But I feel privileged that I can be there with her. But I touch her every day. I touch her. And she finally said to me, Papa, why do you touch me that way? And I said, I don't want to answer that question. She said, why? And I said, the best person to answer that question is your dad. And the next day she says, I know you are here and you're not always going to be here. And I said, that's it. I just put my hand on your shoulder. I just want you to know I'm sitting right next to you. You can say anything you want to me. And he's a girl dad. Jeremy is the most amazing girl dad. And I'm a boy great grandpa and grandpa, but I love Peyton. And our trust is to that point where she calls me and she asks me things that she cannot ask her father, because he might be 100 feet up inside some superstructure in a refinery. So she calls me and she asks me girl stuff, or she calls my wife and she trusts her. That it's an incredible level of trust. It's an amazing feeling.
When you mix martial arts and I don't know how to say this without just taking a lot of words. I'm not Steinbeckian here, but I like to put the art in martial art and make sure that we keep in track of that, because yes, we're hitting things with sticks and I'm choking people and all that kind of stuff, but there is an art to it. There is a mastery over ego. There is a mastery over your body that you're doing. There's a lot of things that are going on that create beauty in my own world. The person you become when you're on a mat, when you're doing a kata, whatever it is, and you're just taking the edges off of yourself, the links to tradition, all these things that go into these martial arts. It can be hyper brutal, bloody and everything, but also there is the art side of it. And so I guess, would you be the same person that you are now would you have found a different path to get there? Was how integral is martial arts in the person that you're becoming?
In 1992, when I ended up with our grandson, we did two things. We gave him piano, and I did something I wanted to do since I was in high school, is I got him into martial arts, and we started doing it together. Now, I would always go to his class, and then he would wait for mine. But in that class, one of the things I wanted to do, because I was already fairly philosophical anyways, is to understand what it meant to be a martial artist. And so they always told the kids modesty, integrity, perseverance, self-control, indomitable spirit. And I already listened to a lot of motivational speakers, Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, Jack Canfield, Earl Nightingale, the greats of those days that, Tony Robbins was just getting going. But one of the most important things about martial arts is the mental portion is being centered. The idea that you never tell anybody in a fight that you're a martial artist because they think that they must then defeat you, is that you have this center. I know it sounds funny, you maybe agree with it. Most people do not know that Bruce Lee was an incredible author, great speaker, but just the one statement that took me a long time to learn is be water, to be fluid. People watch elders do Tai Chi. Tai Chi is part of Jeet Kune Do and Kung Fu. It's a slow motion killing, okay? Everything is in slow motion. But that's an art, to slow your body down like that and to have it act exactly the way that you want, to be able to jump in the air and kick something over your head. Board breaking is a little bit different because I think you can train anybody to do that. But it is something that my wife, actually, she complains about now. She said, you walked around like an elephant and now you're like a stealth. She says, you're so quiet when you come around. You scare the hell out of me whenever you show up because I don't know you're here. I literally announce myself now because I've learned how to.
I'm coming down the hall.
That's right. And I've learned to be more fluid. Not perfect, certainly, but martial arts, I think there's something embedded in the middle of martial arts, especially I've read the Code of the Bushido and the Samurai. People think, oh, it's all sword fighting and everything. Boy, before you ever pick up a sword, you have to learn the code. And one of the things in the code is honor and loyalty. And if you're an honorable man, loyalty. If you're an honorable woman, loyalty becomes a lot better. Honor your father and mother, honor your wife, right? So martial arts has played a huge role in my life, but it also allows me to train my body where I can accomplish things that other people will never learn how to do. It's true. And then you own them.
Yeah, there's a mastery over things, and you said in the middle, and I think, and I've been on several different martial art type journeys in my life, but this one is my current one. It's going pretty good. But the centering of self and working from the inside out to know where my left foot is and what it's doing, and seeing with that foot while I'm trying to breathe, also taking care of my training partner. I'm trying to apply hard, but not impossible, not 100%. So I'm monitoring all these things at one time. And there's no room for much else. And even then, I still don't have the capacity to do all of it well. If my elbow needs to be like this instead of this, I don't have that fine detail yet, but I understand where this is going. And there's all kinds of opportunities in at least the martial art that I use, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, to find a way to center yourself. So anybody who's been to this kind of thing, we rank order ourselves in a line when it's time to line up for throughout the class. But that's the rule. But the norm is that, like, if all the ladies are grouped together in a cluster and they're different belts, I don't jump into the middle of that, because I look at that as being like, they are working around a bunch of dudes, and if they want to cluster together, then I'm gonna break with the norm and allow them to have that, even though I could just stand right there. And it would be perfectly pleasant if I do. But I've realized that they gather together partly because they're similar belts, but also because they're training together. It's almost like these distinct classes. And so I don't need to stand where my belt says that I stand. I need to stand where it works the best, because it's not really about me and my belt, my ranking. We're still honoring the tradition, but also we have a new tradition. We have women training with us, and at times, I am their training partner too. But it is two different worlds existing in the same place, and because I'm not worried about where I'm standing in the line, um, I can let a better thing happen, at least from my point of view and how I see it.
That is such a great statement. When I was doing regular martial arts, karate, taekwondo, kung fu, not only was everything oriented to a belt, uh, it would be rare that you would spar with a woman.
Mm.
In Filipino martial arts, it's just Grandmaster Mel. All right, who wants to fight the white guy tonight? The old white guy. And they would tell people I'm 80, and I would say I'm 70. Okay, I'm 70. I'm not 80. But it was a joke. But the thing is that I have to be twice as skilled as my opponent, because she's not 50 or 60 or 70. She's 15 or 20.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I become thunder. They're lightning.
Yeah.
You can get your bell rung by a 15-year-old the same way you would as a 30-year-old, because when you're wearing full fencing gear and you have that helmet on and somebody strikes that helmet full force, you've got your ears are ringing. Okay.
Yeah.
I have respect for girls in martial arts. They work just as hard as we do. I'm so proud of I have a great niece, Savannah, and she is in a college in Missouri, and I'm going to forget the name of it. She's on a full ride right now. When she was a freshman, she started wrestling as varsity and wrestled all the way through state championships. You know, when she was out on the mat, there wasn't a gender. There was a victory to be had, period.
Yeah.
And she played that way. And you know, I get into the dojo, and to me, it's like I walk in, and Grandmaster Mel knows me. I'm a pretty intense guy. He would walk right up to me as soon as I come in, shake my hand, and just say, Mitchell, empty your cup. Leave it all out there. We're here. And the further I would get into the class, that off kilter arm that you've got that works in a fight, that's supposed to be exactly right here, you get better and better at it, especially when they walk by and they hit you in the arm with a stick. But and your feet, you know, all those are metaphors for how we are in our lives. You have to be properly positioned all the time to receive incoming or to deliver outgoing.
Yeah. I love that. Same thing with words, by the way. If you choose to be someone who marshals words using the SH marshal, you learn how to order them, how to turn complex things into poetry, which are still complex things, but not very many words. One of my favorite things, and I can't remember the number right now, so I'll say the number 67. There are, I think, 67 words in the lyric to Little Wing, but there's so much more in that song, you know? And so I write, you write, a lot of people write, but I love trying to describe something. And I love baseball, so I read a lot of old baseball stories from newspapers, and it's just a different style of writing. And illustration was more commonly done through words than it was through an image. You know, I sort of think of like Family Guy, where they tell the joke 3 times, they say it, then they replay it, and they show you a different version, and then they do it and go back to it again. You're like, you got told the joke 3 times. That wasn't how they did it in the old papers, you know. And they had some wonderful phrases. They turned phrases and all kinds of stuff. And so I love the richness and the color of that. And so I pursue a more unique, especially now that like robots are writing common text for us, right? So I choose to be a little more descriptive, a little looser with the rules of what is and isn't a word. And, you know, I'm the author. I'll let you know it's a word. You will understand the word. Like if I say right now we're podcasting, we all know podcasting wasn't a word 25 years ago, but now it's this verb. We're podcasting right now. And so I love doing that. And I'm curious, when you go to put something as complex as an emotion about addiction or whatever it's going to be, how many drafts, I guess, do you take on a poem before you're like, now it's perfect? Or is it automatic writing and that's it? That's the poem? Because that can also be a form of that as well.
I think when I write, there are certain things that I know that express exactly what I want it to say.
Okay.
But it has to be worded so that you receive it. When the book was edited, as I mentioned to you yesterday, I want somebody to pick up this book and take a piece in it and read it and have me not be in it. When they're reading poetry out loud, it becomes their words, their soul, their heart, their anguish, their joy, their love, their loss, not mine. And so, but I write situationally. Every single piece in here was never planned. Well, there's one piece that was planned because I knew I wanted to do it, and that was with child. So the 50 pieces that are in here, which came from 151, which came from 600, I never sat down and said, all right, I'm going to write this poem. And a lot of poets talk about writer's block. Well, that's because you're trying to write something. Poetry is in itself an inspirational event. When you write from something that's true, or you speak, I pick up my phone, I walk at night, I put on some music, I get an inspiration, I hear a song and it makes me think about something, and I record and I come back and I listen to what I said, which means that I'm not doing poetic structure. I'm writing because I was told to. And I believe that in this book that you and I are talking about, I believe I have help from the divine. I believe that I was guided to write words that not only affected me. Yesterday, I read Rafa yesterday, and I've read it a lot, but for some reason there was a person in the audience yesterday, and as I was reading it, I had a hard time getting through it. I'm talking about this potential loss of my wife, and that I've reached through these vines and I'm bleeding and I'm doing everything I can to find her. I don't know that you can write that kind of a thing by sitting down and saying, I wonder what I'm going to write today. But I do edit, and editing is when you're even, I know that this is true even in stories, but editing a poem can be a little scary because you get to a line and go, oh, I like that, but it doesn't belong in here. And you don't take it out, you surgically remove it. It's been excised, right? It's not deleted, it's excised. You cut it out because it doesn't fit and it doesn't go anywhere else. And sometimes when you're doing that, there's a piece that I wrote, and it was just called The Deer Hunt. And I love Native American storytelling, rites of passage, young men, young women going through something that turns them into the person they're going to become. And it was a page and a half, and now it is 17 pages. I sat down and I started reading it, and I changed the name of it. It's called Living with the Spirit of Matushka, which means white bear in Lakota, hunting the Valley of Voices. And it became this story of this young man who lost his father. And Stephen King said something, I don't agree with a lot of stuff he says, but politically, but in writing, he said, when you are telling the story, people will not listen, they'll get bored. When your characters are telling the story, then there's a story. And I let Chaska, firstborn, tell this story. And I discovered really what the Valley of Voices was. It's a place where these spiritual people live and guide whoever comes there through the hunt, just like we search for spiritual guidance here in our regular lives.
That search for spiritual guidance. How do you know when the message has been received and returned?
In two parts. One, in myself, where I could listen to a rabbi, or in my case, since I have friends that are priests and they have something to say, it can be a regular conversation, or they can say something that's so commonplace to them, but it's a revelation to me.
Mm.
I discover that there's more that I need to know. And from a spiritual point, when I want to communicate with God, well, in order to do that, you don't just say, "Hey, God, I need a new car." It's, "I'm here, uh, and I need to be stronger. I need your support. I need your guidance." And there's so much written in that world about guidance. But the idea is that when I'm talking to myself like that, when I want to lead myself, I again, in our conversation, this about a year and a half ago, this guy says to me, in a conversation, and he's a pastor, is, "Show up like God sent you and speak like God is talking." And I realized the first thing that did is it made me a lot easier to be around,
Mm.
because I have certain ideas about the way the world is, and I want to argue about those things and convince people about my way. And boy, that's not very godly. And it has stopped a lot of arguments. It stopped arguments here at the house. It's like, I cannot be angry at my wife and say things that fly off the handle that I would, say when I'm digging a ditch, right?
Yeah.
But we're compelled to do that. That spiritual connection has led me to know that we we're spiritual beings, right? We're just having a human experience. Everybody gets it other way around, or might say it, but we're here for a short period of time. Um, it's great. I'd rather have a connection with God than to think that my connection is better, that I do better than my neighbor. No competition.
Right. Right. I want to make sure we plug the book again here. Breathe for Me. Poems from our man Mitchell. Right here. Here's the book. You know what I always say? Buddy read, buy two. These things are inexpensive and short, fun reads. You guys should be able to enjoy this. And if you want to start a book club or a part of one, get this book, because I happen to know that guy. And I'm positive he'd love to talk to your book club. Tell me I'm wrong. Like, look, here's the thing with these things, you guys. You buy the book, you read it. Books make great gifts. I don't know why I got to say this so hard to everybody, but trust me on this. If you want to talk to Mitchell about this, it's really easy to get a hold of him. You can email me. You can go on Facebook and find him. He wants you to read this. He wants you to think about it. He wants you to ask questions about it. So buy the book. There's my sales pitch. And if that doesn't work, gosh, I don't know what else to tell you guys. Try to enjoy things in life a little bit. We've been at this for about an hour, and I wanted to make sure I gave you a chance to ask me any questions, or take us anywhere else you want to go before we wrap this up. Obviously, you and I will talk more offline, but I guess unless you have a question, I have one ready to go. But let me know what you want to do next.
I think I would only ask you one thing, and again, as our conversation went, one of the things that so dramatically affected me throughout my life, and I did not understand it until it's not too late for me, but it was too late in terms of my understanding of my relationship with my father, was post-traumatic stress, and what he went through and how it affected him as a human being. And I know that you were in the Army. I understand that you were in special services, you were deployed. I think it's just being more cognizant that every human being has some tragedy that has caused stress in their life, and we don't want to be that person that brings it back out. But how do you see that? I don't know if you got to that part in the book. You read about my brother and and I was the prince in the family, and my brother was the black sheep.
Yeah.
And it gave me so much latitude to do anything. I did anything I want. I grew up. I was a dangerous kid. I don't know how you were.
Yeah, it's when I'll just talk about my PTSD, because that's what I talk about. It's tough to know that you have it, and then it's easy to see that you had it, like really easy to see how insane I was acting because I had lived in this insane world. And so my normal was way over here off the board, right? And then slowly over time, I got my normal back to being more normal. And so I owe a lot of apologies to a lot of friends of mine because I was crazy, you know. But I had this crazy world informing me and my body how to live and react. When I take my show abroad and I set up, I have cameras. You and I can do this at your house, and it would take me about half an hour maybe to set it up, get everything all nice. My body, I'm totally calm, just like I am now. But my body is like, holy shit, we're getting shot at. And so I'll tell you, like, you're gonna see me get really hot and sweaty. I'm gonna be fine. It's just my body. My body reacts when I do these kinds of things, like I'm in combat. I'm not really there. My mind is calm, but my body is not. And so I try to master this, but I've not figured out how to do it. And so when I think about that, and it's just today, I was talking to another guy from Benicia. We were having breakfast together down here in Orange County, and we were talking about how, like, for me, Disney's not the happiest place on earth because it's is crowded in a way that I can't control, that I can't deal with, and so I don't always, but I can. My PTSD can get the better of me, and then I now have systems and things that I can do to like calm myself down, but I'm still on the ride. Like it's like when someone's like, "Well, just arrest them." Like, well, getting arrested sucks. So it's like, yeah, it's getting this trigger of the PTSD. It sucks, and so I can act in a way that I wouldn't normally act towards people that I care about because they're close to me, and I can thrash around like I'm drowning and be terrible to people. And I don't like that. I don't like to put myself in those positions, and so adapting all of those behaviors to more realistic, common behaviors that are more true to who I am. But there are days when I've had this week like where I get depressed, and so I'm like, okay, I need to. It's fine to be depressed. It's part of my life. It's okay, but I have to deal with it in a way that like it's like if you put on, oh, I put on 10 pounds. Well, I need to change my behaviors to get these pounds off of me. Yes, I was indulgent. It was a time to be indulgent. That's all good, but now it's time to get back to it. And so PTSD for me is something that it is my job to manage it. And the people around me shouldn't have to take the brunt of my mismanagement of it. And so I work to be a better human, even when my systems are failing. And the other thing I do with all of this is like, if instead of trying to jump over an 8 foot barrier every damn day, I just take the bar and I put it on the ground on my hard days. And I'm like, all I got to do today is just relax. If it's a nap day, it's a nap day. I'm going to mentally recover. And that's the first way I start kind of like my reset, right? So if I push myself too hard, if I get too hard on myself or whatever it is, I notice these things earlier. So I arrest the decline. And I have a system now that I built, not on my own. I had a lot of help to be able to get myself from it. So the last thing I want to do to anybody else is put them in a situation where maybe I've triggered them, but also it's not my job to act like I'm going to protect them from themselves. It is ultimately their job. And so if someone doesn't like fireworks, hey, great, you know, don't go around fireworks. I can do fireworks. It doesn't bother me. So you don't have to come. I'm not going to bug you to come. I'm not going to peer pressure you, but I'm going to go enjoy the fireworks. I don't know if that explains at all what you were trying to talk about, but I am trying to capture like these are very individual things. Your version is different than my version. Your reasons are your reasons. Mine are mine. And as long as we can cohabitate and commiserate, hey, I'm happy to figure out what that looks like for everybody. As long as we're all looking out for one another, and that doesn't mean, you know, that can mean like I'm looking out for you, but I'm letting you do you, and I'm going to do me. And when we need to get together, we do.
I love the way that you said that. Once I understood what was happening with my daughter,
Yeah,
after her sexual assault, and growing up in a family where ultimately, for better or for worse, codependency, you can call it whatever it is.
yeah,
Until I lost my brother, I was my brother's keeper. And when I look at my daughter, I live a very tenuous tightrope with her because I'm a man and she has this idea that I can trigger her. So we don't see each other as much as I would like to, but I only talk about what she wants to talk about. And I give her that latitude. Way in the back of her mind, for whatever value it was. She knows that when I showed up at midnight over 30 years ago and she was a bloody mess and she had cut herself, and I didn't know that she'd been cutting herself. My wife didn't for years. She's got hundreds of scars. I thought I was going to save her. Mm-hmm. Now I know it's just like the airplane, man. Put your oxygen on first. You can't save somebody else if you're dying.
That's right.
And I don't get triggered the same way, but I have to be honest with you. I just even telling you about my father chasing my brother, telling my brother he's not going to be anybody. And then the next day taking my brother to a baseball game like he's the only child. And you get that therapy thing, and then the therapist is going to say the ones who take the brunt of it are the ones who are loved the most. I don't know that that's true, but I can tell you one thing. I don't know that until my father passed away, I don't know there was a single time that he did not call me and ask me how my brother was.
Right.
Not once. I have some PTSD from the hospital. There are certain visions that come to my mind, and they are only for me. They're so inconsequential to the people that I know. There's a group of people that I know, and they're all the people that you know. When I deal with my military veterans and they come to me and they say, hey, I've got this disability and here's how I want to use it, and I want to get a VA loan and all of that. Never once since 1983, when I really got engaged in this business, have I ever asked a military veteran about their disability. Never. It's not, I don't even know how I would ask that, because you have to say, hey, this is what's going on with me. Hey, I lost my wife, or I lost my best friend in war, or I was shot at. You have to own what you have to own. And if you want to share it with me, I know that we're at the end. I want to tell you something, and I said this to you. I thought people were telling me stories when this book came out, because they immediately started seeing things, especially the sexual assault. Women would tell me things, husbands who lost their wives, husbands, family members who had a guy like my dad. And I realized nobody's telling me anything. I'm telling them in the back of the books, it says, I will breathe for you. If that's what it says, then they're giving me a story. They're not telling me one. They're handing it to me, maybe for just a few seconds. What if they gave me a story and it lightened their load for just a moment? That's my evolution. It's an amazing discovery that your story of woe has to be respected. It has to be understood, and never, and I said this in a podcast long, especially men, those two words are the worst two words in the world. Me too. Never me too anybody. And I heard this the other day, and it was a Charlie Kirk thing. The word empathy is nearly almost a made up word. I can be sympathetic to you. There's no way I can ever feel what you have felt. Nobody can feel my sense of love, and nobody will be able to feel my sense of loss. It belongs to you.
Yeah.
That's what I've learned.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm when I hear the word empathy, I run to I fancy myself a cultural expert because I've used culture to survive being a spy. So I've studied it, I've lived it, I've read the academics. I'm well read in that topic. And when someone says empathy, I'm like, empathy is great as long as you tolerate that person's thing. Do people have political empathy? No. Oh, okay. So now we have a crack in empathy. Like there's a crack, right? You cannot tolerate that. You must go get. Okay, well then your empathy machine's broken. So I'm not saying there's not empathy, and I'm not saying EQ isn't a thing, but culture is stronger. And if you can reliably sit in someone else's culture, if I go to your Christmas or your Jewish blended Christmas or whatever it is, and I can experience it without losing my mind, that's a stronger skill set. Because it gathers a whole bunch of things, the mores, the norms, all these things that we do. that's the more challenging thing, because it requires even greater tolerance, because empathy requires tolerance. No, it doesn't. Okay, you're right. You're no, oh, you proved me wrong. All right, see you later. but that's how empathy works, right? And so yeah, I can't actually feel your thing for you. No, I can't just intuit it. No, I can't. Some people may be tuned in. All right, that's fine. You want to call that empathy? Okay, fine. But really what we're talking about is something that's a higher level, the cultural side, because that does require you to deal with religious differences. It does require you to deal with political differences. It does require. And empathy is a little too ethereal for me to be an answer. Again, I'm not saying they're not empaths, but like if you go, I probably don't believe you. I'm gonna let you be you. I'm going to love you for another reason, but the empathy thing won't be the primary thing, because for me, there's a lot of problems with empathy as a main path. How did I do? Is that all right?
That was great. It just leads me to say something that's so important, especially men. I feel your pain. It's like, how about hey, Peter, I feel my pain because you reminded me how I felt when that happened. If you want to tell me about what you're experiencing, because the
Sure.
moment I say I feel your pain, I'm not inside you. I'm not in your head.
Right.
I don't know that it's maybe painful for you, but it's not as painful for you as it is for me, or vice versa.
Right.
It's my intuition, my knowledge, that
Sure.
empath thing that you're talking about, where you're literally in sync with somebody, but you still cannot experience what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When you're two people are on a roller coaster, one is thrilled to death and the other one is scared to death, but they're both screaming. But if you
Yeah.
really look at their faces, you can tell one of them is not having a great experience.
Right. Yes. And the empath is looking and pointing and laughing at the person who's terrorized because they're having them. Like I'm being hard on empaths. Everybody's got it. But yeah, I mean these things are tough. And when we talk about intuition and trusting your gut, hey, at times, yeah. But if you don't know the last time your gut was wrong, you're trusting your gut too much. I saw that. I saw that face, right? Because that's a real thing. I can try to intuit what my opponent is going to do on Saturday, but if he doesn't do it, am I going to remember? Oh man, my intuition was wrong. I have a sense of something, but if I don't keep track at all of when I'm wrong about it, well, then I can't tune it to become better. These Everything's going to be good. It requires work. Everything's a competition. You know, if you think like in my world, we focus a lot on words and human interaction and reading body language. And I think all of us in the spy world will say, "Oh, I got a lot of learning to do. I might be brilliant in one little area, but it's humans, and so it's hard to know everything." So when someone comes along, and I'm a black belt at what I do, but what I do is a very narrow thing. Like my peers that are also black belts, they don't do what I do. I don't do what they do, but we respect each other's degree. We we get real easy with expertise when it comes to other things like empathy and these other cultural knowledge. You know, people think they can interview someone and not practice at it and then be good. And not practice to the point. And I talk to a lot of people that want to have podcasts, like, oh, they'll say the words, "Oh, I can't stand to hear myself speak." Well, if you can't withstand it, why does somebody else have to do it? You've got to put the work in. Anything we do, when it's emotional based or whatever else, you need to become an expert at it if you're going to say. And again, I'm mocking my empath friends. I'm not talking about anybody in particular. I'm just doing a caricature. You guys, calm down. But that's the real thing. That's how I see it. If you want to be good at culture, you need to talk intelligently about culture. You need to know the body of work that goes into CQ, the cultural intelligence, so you can understand where you are within that body of work. If you're ignorant to that body of work, then you're a layperson, and you might be great at it, but you can't demonstrate it versus the decades and decades and decades of work that's published on CQ and EQ, frankly.
You're you have to be honed in. You have to have an intuition. You know, when you watch a movie and the guy's walking down the street, and he's in your world and he senses that somebody is watching him. It could just be somebody watching him, or it could be somebody who's an adversary. And so it's situational awareness too. I try to let men know this. It's like when you go into a bar and you're hunting for a woman, your situational awareness is how stupid are you going to be? Sorry, I think hunting in bars is ridiculous, right? But because when you walk in, if you think that you look a certain way and you're going to attract somebody, you begin to look at everybody and to try to find out if they're finding you, right? That breaks all the rules of being a spy. You don't want anybody to find you, right? You want to be casually noticed. A man who wants to be casually noticed, who carries himself well, a woman who wants to be casually noticed and carries herself well, is not a target of the guy who's going to come over and say, hey, what's your sun sign? Bam, right?
Yeah.
No, I like the way that you explain that, because the empathy thing, obviously being in the world where, you're doing your research on people, your Corvette actions and everything, you have to take your personality out of that so that you can really understand what are they about to do so you can stop it or promote it. Well, the same thing happens in your home. You have to be a good spy in your house. And somebody told me something a while ago, and then they had this regret. And I said, hey, I wrote a book. There's a part in my book called The Secret Keeper. I learned how to do that when I was in high school. I was not good at going out with girls. I was not going to be the guy that took you out and, scored or whatever the hell you wanted to call it. But I was definitely the guy that if something happened to you, I was the guy you could call, and I would get you home if you were drunk. I was the guy. I was the secret keeper, and I've carried that my entire life. And I have things that my daughter has told me, things that my wife has told me, and I've never told either of them those stories because they're private.
Right.
If it's an amazing thing to keep to yourself the honor that somebody has told you something. And I was shown something the other day by one of my clients, and I was so astounded at what it was. And I said, I believe that this probably needs to be a secret. He goes, absolutely, man. I told him, I said, I am honored to see this. It's crazy. And in a private setting, there's a couple of things I can tell you about what he showed me, because as men, it's like, wow. And it involves equipment and ownership of things. But then our whole lives is we want to own stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, I want to keep going, but we got to stop because I got another show coming up, and I have more to say to you. But we'll just have to get together and do more of this. But there's what you just said. There's a whole bunch of things. I will say one more thing because I can't resist. When I was a spy, one of the things that I was known for, at least to the people I was talking to, was like if you saw me working, you would never know I was working. You think Pete's just fucking around talking to people, but there's a design and everything, And again, I'll use jujitsu as an example. When you see a black belt rolling with a white belt, the black belt guy's not working that hard. He's just like, "Yep, no, put your right hand there," telling him, like, "This is how you beat me. Do this, all right," and just always 5 steps ahead. So that's what it looks like when I'm doing it. It just looks like, and I have the character I play, and even though I'm being truthful, there is like a heightened version of me, and I call him Johnny Goodtime. Hey, it's Johnny Goodtime, right? Because I want you to want to see me. And in the times when someone has looked at me and said, "Are you a spy?" Here's what I would say: yes. And if I ask you a question you don't want to answer, don't, because I'm not here to harm anybody. I'm here to help people. That's the kind of spy I am. And they'd be like, "Well, all right." And I'm telling you right there, that move unlocked so much access for me. They would introduce, "Oh, that's Pete. He's the American spy I was telling you about." I'm like, "Yeah, that's me." And they're like, "Spy?" He's like, "Oh, he's fine." And so now they're vouching for me in a way that is friend to friend, and kind of how like you got introduced to me through Eric. Eric's like, "Oh yeah, he's great." Like there's a vouching, even though he said spy, you didn't have a negative connotation to it. And if it's not delivered in that way, it works. Is that always? Do I want anybody else to play that? No, this is like multi-level black belt. Don't start there. But you can in your own life find these spots where you can be open about your intention, and you can say, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. Yeah, you're going to say the word spy. Maybe you think it's negative. A lot of people just simply don't believe me. Now, at the time, while I was a spy, when I would come home, I would sometimes be a Captain Morgan model. If I went to a bar, which I did in Vegas, if I lived there, I would say, yeah, I'm a spy normally when I go to Iraq, but here in town, I'm a Captain Morgan model. And they're like, whatever. They didn't believe me anyhow. So it didn't even matter. And so that's the funny thing about some of these things is sometimes the direct approach is the best approach. I'm not trying to harm anybody. Yeah, I'm a spy. Don't be influenced by me. The whole time I'm influencing them because I let them know whatever they want. I'm not trying to keep a secret from you. I'm trying to be honest with you. And if you want to ask me a question, ask me a question. Anyhow, so I'll say that, and then I really will let you close it up.
You know what? One of the things that you've done for me in our conversation yesterday and finishing up today is something I learned a long time ago and I'm still working on. The moment we're impressed with ourselves is when we are the most effed up. And the one thing is like, even your email to me, hey, if you're a friend of Eric's, you're a friend of mine, come on the show, right?
Yeah.
There's no, you're not pretentious. It's not, hey, here's what I did when I was in country. Here's what I did when I was, not in country. You're just like, you're the same guy, by the way. You're just a different version of that guy on here. And you lay out who you are in such a simple way that's like, this is my friend or my buddy. I don't have to say what you are. It'd be like if you went out with a guy who was 6 feet tall, who's more of a normal height for, say, a guy who's definitely taller than me, to say, this is my friend Sam, not my friend Sam who's a professional basketball player. Let them discover that for themselves because he's just Sam. You're Peter, I'm Mitchell.
My buddy.
The way you laid that out is that you just want people to see who you are. We all want to do
exactly right. Yeah. And I know I keep extending this whole thing, but you're right. And one of the big secrets, and I realized this just through a raindrop, a muddy raindrop that fell on my arm in Iraq. And I already had the elements, but it really crystallized like, oh my gosh, they talk about me. They know who I am. And I need to be the same person everywhere. It needs to be obvious. That needs to be an intentional thing where I am going to be me. I'm not going to be like, hi, I'm Drake from, whatever. Like, no, you be you. Because that's who I need to be so that they can be them. And if we're not going to be who we each other are, well, then now we have all these barriers that we don't need. And I don't got time for barriers, man. This is tactical collection. I may see this person once or twice. And so I want the word to get around about me. I want the enemy to know I'm out there collecting. I need that. I want to meet the worst possible people and break down barriers as fast as I can so that they can tell me the thing or introduce me to the person as fast as possible because time's a wasting. The clock is ticking until the next bad thing happens. My job is to get there first. And so I can't do that by being like, well, I'm Drake. And, and all these, that's too pretentious for the speed of the work that I had to do. Okay, really, I am going to let you wrap it up. I am going to shut up and then we're going to stop doing this. But this has been great.
It's a conversation I hope that we get to have again and do this podcast again and that men, especially men, need to understand, and not that women don't, but it's how we operate. Everything you and I just said in the last 5 minutes is one word: authenticity. Just be real. And when you're real, people will, whether they're attracted to you or not, they will know one thing is that we're honest about who we are.
Perfect. Don't say another word. We're going to wrap it up right now. Everybody break it down so you guys know what to do. Subscribe. That's what we do around here. Subscribe. I'm supposed to say this because you guys apparently don't know. Subscribe. Also, buy books. Buy Mitchell's book or don't, but buy these books. Get them to people. Give books. Make great gifts. I'm telling you, if you send me a book, I'm like, oh, wow. He thinks, who gets good mail anymore? Unexpected good mail. You didn't order. Like, you sent me a book? Thank you. You're going to get a phone call from me. That's how everybody feels about books. So send someone a book. All right. I'm going to shut up here. Mitchell, I'll talk to you in a second. Everybody else, I'll see you just in a few minutes. We're going to have my buddy. You're going to get this. Mitch is going to come on the show. Another one. So stand by, everybody.